All right, so I talked a little bit about this the other day on my Instagram, and me and you, Jacob, we kind of talked about it yesterday a little bit, and then Rian, are obviously familiar with this kind of stuff too, so I thought it'd be pretty cool to just talk about it very briefly. Um, what we're going to talk about is two administration methods as far as like medications go for like peptides, things like that. That's going to be sublingual and the Buccal method. It looks like Buccal is Buccal. It looks like some weird foreign name, but it's Buccal. I had to ask Google how to pronounce it, so I think that's right. Um, but anyway, so I just want to talk about those two briefly, just kind of go over what they are, how they work, pros, cons, that kind of thing, and what method that you should use. Um, and then we'll just kind of roll from there. So, first, we'll talk about the sublingual administration, which is underneath of the tongue. So, obviously, you see a lot of people, I've seen a lot of teenagers on TikTok and Instagram Reels where they're taking these peptides, these SARMs, things like that, and they're just taking the dropper and just putting it down the back of their throat and swallowing it. And I'm like, no, that's completely wrong. You're not getting anywhere near the doses that you think that you're getting because you're swallowing it. It's supposed to be sublingual, and they're just doing it completely wrong. So how this method actually works. It's pretty simple. The medication dissolves, inside of, well, underneath the tongue, through, and it enters the bloodstream directly, through the mucous membrane underneath the tongue, and just enter the bloodstream that way. Biggest thing here though is it's going to bypass the digestive system, called the first pass effect. So it bypasses the digestive system and the liver as well too, which means faster absorption. And there's less potency lost. Having to go through the digestive system and things like that. It's almost like you taking an IM, or sub-Q, but instead of injecting it, it's just getting into your blood stream, like just being absorbed through that mucous membrane and into the bloodstream that it goes. Now, typically, this kind of supplement is held underneath the tongue for 30 seconds. And if I'm being honest, when I take any kind of peptide, currently I'm taking MK677 just to help with hunger and things like that. Um, I find it difficult to hold it underneath my tongue for 30 seconds. I don't know why. I think it's just because all that saliva and stuff start to just compile inside of my mouth, and it makes me want to swallow, but I actively count to 30. And then once this, I think it's good and kind of done the job that it's supposed to do, I'll go ahead and swallow it. And it tastes awful. A lot of these things do, and it leaves a pretty bad aftertaste in your mouth. But again, it's kind of like fish oil. If you take a fish oil and you burp several hours later, it tastes like fish. That's kind of the delayed effect that you'll get, I guess. Now, one reason to use this sublingual method is when you need fast results. Like fast absorption. Now, another application to use this outside of like what we're talking about, like peptides and SARMs and things like that, are for medications like nitroglycerin for chest pain. If somebody is about to have a heart attack, they need that medicine into their body quickly. Sublingual into their bloodstream pretty quick. Now, honestly, intramuscular would be faster or more that prescribed dosage would be more accurate if it's injected into the muscle, but the majority of the time, that sublingual is going to be, I'm not going to say just as good, but it's probably more readily available. I could take, that MK677 with me anywhere. It's got a little, built-in dropper with it, but if you had to take something like that, like that nitroglyceride or nitroglycerin with you, you would have to take, if you had it in the IM version, a needle, a drawing needle, the medicine, the alcohol swab. It's just a pain. The sublingual method is obviously going to be a little bit easier to carry at that point. And then I guess, another point that you could say is they have difficulty swallowing the pills. I don't know why, but for some reason, when I was a kid, I could not swallow pain pills at all. I would gag. I would just throw them right back up. And so, thankfully, they had those little grape flavored dissolvable Tylenols, and you just pop them underneath your tongue, and it was like a little tablet, and it dissolved, and then you swallowed it. That was my saving grace for when I was younger and I had to take stuff for like colds and sinus infections and things like that. I don't know why I couldn't even swallow the tiniest pill. I couldn't tell you why. Now you guys see how big like fish oil pills are. Those things are that big, and I can swallow a handful of those no issue. So thankfully, I don't have to rely on any kind of sublingual medication now. And now some some pros and cons of sublingual administration. Obviously, the pros is the thing that we've just talked about, faster absorption. One big thing too is it's going to avoid gastrointestinal problems. So if you were to swallow something like that just almost immediately and not let that dose get dissolved right away, you're probably going to have some kind of stomach irritability, and that's pretty common. But if you actually do the full 30 seconds and let the majority of that get it, absorbed, it's not going to be as bad. And then obviously it's simple and non-invasive. There's no shot required. It's just underneath the tongue, and you're done. The cons, it's not really a con. It's just unpleasant, I guess. Like the taste is unpleasant, and the requirement of holding the medicine underneath the tongue. Some people are just not going to be able to do that. And again, you just kind of got to make yourself and you count to 30, that kind of thing. So that's the way that I typically do things. I've never tried the but well, I tried it once, and it was honestly about the same as doing the sublingual in an essence to where once I had to hold my mouth open for like 30 seconds, all that saliva would just build up and it would make me want to swallow the medicine. But again, I had to count to 30 to keep that medicine in the right spot for the allotted time so it would be absorbed at the right rate and get that proper dosage. So if we look at the Buccal method, this method involves placing the medication in between your cheek and your gum. It's pretty similar to what the sublingual has, but there are a few differences, I guess, that you could say. Um, Instead of it going, through the mucous membrane underneath the tongue, it's going to get absorbed through the inner lining of the mouth in itself. Again, it's not underneath the tongue; it's in between your gums. And some people even put it up here, like you're putting dip in, I guess, somewhere in there. That would work too. And just like the sublingual method is going to avoid the digestive tract, it's going to deliver that medication directly to the bloodstream. Now, when to use the buckle method when you need. So it's not as fast as the sublingual, but it is rather quick. But it's not as fast as sublingual. So if you have a medication that doesn't need to be absorbed as fast, the buckle method is a good one to use. Um, Things like gradual release medications. That's also one reason to do the buckle. I mean, because it does take a little bit of time. It does take longer than 30 seconds. It probably takes a minute to 2 minutes somewhere in there for that peel to actually dissolve if you're using a peel form. In between the cheek and the gum for it to be actually absorbed and things like that, and you'll obviously swallow the rest of it. And then again, this is just an alternative for people who can't hold it underneath the tongue for 30 seconds, or they have trouble doing that. And then just like the sublingual, there are obviously pros and cons for the buckle method. The pros, it's convenient for holding the medication underneath if the tongue is uncomfortable for some reason. It's going to be a slower release of the medication or a more gradual release, and there's less likelihood of you swallowing that medication as compared to sublingual. As soon as I put that sublingual underneath my tongue, I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, I try to count fast, but I know I have to count a little bit slower because it's I have to give it time. But again, holding your mouth open is gonna, that those saliva glands are gonna start dumping saliva in your mouth. To, hopefully keep the mouth moist and things like that. So that stuff does accumulate pretty quick. But the buccal method doesn't seem to do that at a fast clip like the sublingual method does. And now there is like one or two cons. If you're, and I don't even know why that you would do this, but I mean, if you took the medication and then you're eating at the same time, again, you could swallow it or it can move around, get out of place, things like that. If it was me, I would just wait the 1 or 2 minutes and then eat. But I'm guessing there could be some medications that do take a little bit longer than just 1 or 2 minutes, I guess. I'm honestly not sure, to be 100% honest, but um, and then the I guess a con would be, if you're looking at it from the perspective of absorption rate, the con is that it's going to take a little bit longer than the sublingual method. Um, but again, either one is a viable option. A lot of people like to go these two routes mainly because they don't want to use intermuscular injections or subcutaneous injections, because let's be honest, that stuff is not fun. It does not feel good the majority of the time, and it's just more convenient to have something that you could just take a little dropper, put it underneath your tongue, or if it's in pill form, just pop it in between your gum and your cheek, and then you're good to go. You don't have to carry around a vial of medication, a needle, a syringe, an alcohol swab, things like that, to where it's a hassle to carry that stuff around. So, um, like I said, this was going to be something that I talked about on my Instagram yesterday, but a little more in depth than what I could provide in a 60-second reel on Instagram. And they both are pretty similar, if we're being 100% honest, with each other. I think the biggest difference is, though, is obviously the placement. Obviously, sublingual is underneath the tongue. Buccal is, in between the gum and the cheek, and then the absorption rate. The buccal is just going to be a little bit slower than the sublingual, which, how much slower? Probably not enough to matter, if I'm being honest. But so, yeah, that's all I got for that. Um, Does anybody have any questions with anything? I know some of you here do take peptides. I don't know, or sublingual or buccal um, administration routes could be used with some of the medications that you guys take. Um, does any for any of you that use that kind of administration route, is there anything that you see like pro con wise, or just is it pretty? I'm guessing it's pretty self-explanatory once you get to use it a bunch. I would imagine.
I've actually never used sublingual or buccal for peptides. I've tried a couple of peptides nasal spray, which ends up kind of going
Yep.
that same type of route as well, at the end of the day. But yeah, I've only like really, I've like heard obviously of oral dosing and buccal specifically. I think methylene blue was the first time I've actually seen
Yep.
um, that type of compound in like a buckle, like specifically, and it reminded me of like dip, right?
Yeah.
Of like how you administer it. But yeah, that was the first time I'd really seen a compound with that type of dosing instructions, but I haven't tried any of it.
Now I know that so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the peptide MT2. It's melanotan 2 is what it is. And the typical administration route for it is either sub-Q, or it's through a nasal spray. Um, and for those of you who don't know what MT2 is, it's a tanning peptide. Me as being a white male, I don't produce as much melanin as a black guy does, right? A black individual. They produce more melanin. That's why they're darker, and that's why that I'm lighter than them, is because they produce more. So when you take that MT2 stuff, it's going to, and again, I'm not 100% sure of the actual metabolic pathway that it uses, but from what my understanding is it helps your body produce more melanin, and bring it up to the surface. So once you do take that, within 30 minutes, it's good to go. Get in the sunlight, get in the tanning bed. And like I said, the two main administration routes with those is either a sub-Q injection, or it's a nasal spray. Now, if you use the nasal spray, I've heard of people who their nose will start to turn different colors, as far as like the inside of their nose will start to turn really really brown, because you're squeezing and putting a ton of that peptide, right there in your nose. That's the main administration point. So it looks like you got a dirty nose, right? And then if you do the sub Q, you have to be sure to rotate injection sites simply because if you just do it in one small, a particular area every single time, you're going to have a patch that's significantly darker than everywhere else. Again, because that's where you're administering the medicine. And so I don't even know if they even have it in a oral form. But again, that's another form of, or that's two other forms of administration that that you can use too. I'm not a fan of the nasal sprays. As soon as I do a nasal spray, it makes me want to sneeze. And so I don't know how effective or how long I need to hold that sneeze back until it's coming out, or if I do it one time and I just sniff as hard as I can and it's in there again. I'm not very familiar with that as far as like how long that you have to hold it, but it's definitely a viable method as long as you just not sneeze, I guess. So
I get to try one that doesn't burn like the worst burning sensation ever. That's the worst part of it.
I've had during COVID at work they give us this thing called X Clear. It was some kind of like homeopathic, medication or something. And it was a nasal spray, and I tried it, and it was one squirt in this nose, in this nostril, in this nostril. And by the time I got to this one, I was already sneezing. So I don't know if it even did me any good or not. But I guess the compounds in it weren't very irritable, I guess. So it didn't really cause any kind of like pain or discomfort, but just instant sneezing is what it was. So. But yeah, so does anybody have any questions with any of that, or just any questions in general, I guess?
think the only thing that I have is like, so whenever you're talking about like holding it, up under your tongue for 30 seconds or whichever, is there something like, so like, because I would assume that most of them are not completely dissolved. So you would just swallow the rest of it. You're just
Yep.
making sure that you get the majority of the dosage within that
Yep.
first 30 seconds.
Yep. Yep. And they say 30. I know some medications are like a minute to 2 minutes long. I've always just seen where it just says, 30 seconds, just hold it, underneath your tongue. And then at that point, the majority of it is going to be absorbed anyway. I mean, once you do swallow it, I mean, you're going to get some of that, once it goes through the digestive system and the liver, you'll still get a little bit of that potency. But, let's say if you, drop 25 mcg of whatever, underneath your tongue and 20 of it absorbs and, five goes into your stomach, how much of that five that you're going to get once it goes through your digestive tract and your liver, it's really not going to be five, right? Some of that is just going to get lost along the way, and its potency is going to dive. I don't know if you'll get one or four or three, but again, the majority of it is going to be absorbed underneath the tongue if you at least hold it for 30. So I normally do it, hold it for 30, swallow, and then get a drink of water, and then swish it around the mouth, and then just swallow it again. Just be sure that all that's down, and then I brush my teeth because that stuff is awful. It's got an awful taste to it, but but cool deal. If nobody else has got any more questions, like I said, I didn't plan on this being a long one, so I didn't want to bore you guys with too many questions and whatnot. But yeah, if nobody's got any more questions, we'll wrap it up and call it a day. So everybody good?
I think so.
Cool. Well, hey Miss Millie, good to see you. Zach, we have not seen your birthday suit yet, so you missed your opportunity. But
Happy birthday song.
um, but anyway,
Yeah,
so yeah,
I
you
couldn't
guys
go to my
have.
office. I had to do it. I had to leave my clothes on in the office.
Okay. All right. Next time then. Next time. We'll get a bigger audience next time. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm gonna knock some of these check-ins out and then take the rest of the day off for my birthday. So I'll talk to you guys soon and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
All right. Bye,
Yeah.
y'all.